You let the other person on?
I'm sorry.
Jessica, you said someone was trying to get in with a password. Did
I
that person come
did
on?
send it to them. I hope they got
Oh,
on.
she hasn't come on yet. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. Hopefully some more people will join us, but I'm glad you guys are all here. I see
There
that
she
Nick popping
is.
up. There she is. Hi, Marianne. We'll wait a minute till you get on. Shira and Sarah are here. There she is. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Just wave, yeah. I don't see Laura anymore. There she is. So I'm Lisa Sage. I'm a board member at Temple Kol Tikva for Diversity and Inclusion. And I want to welcome all of you here. I have a committee. There's 5 of us on the committee, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I'm the chairperson, and we have Laura Mitchell and Jake Scherb. They're also joining us tonight as panelists. We also have David McCarty Kaplan. Raise your hand. There he is. And sometimes Jessica's able to join us and help us out. And she's helping us tonight. Thank you, Jessica. Those are our current committee members. David just joined us in September, and Laura and Jake have been with us since the beginning, which was December of 2020. So it's a little over 2 years now. And Cynthia, who couldn't make it with us tonight, she's also part of our committee, Cynthia Deculas. And she's been a great help to our committee and to us. And all the members are great committee members. Everybody has great ideas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the committee and what we've done. So for those of you who haven't been to some of our programs, we put a panel on last year as well. It was just Jake and I. So I was a panelist and a moderator. And Jake and I did that together, and it went very well. We had a lot of people participate on Zoom. And let me try to think, going back to the beginning. I believe we did 1 or 2 other panels, if I can remember correctly, on Zoom. We also, I'm thinking, I spoke at a couple of Shabbat services for Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. And that's why we're all here tonight for part of that month. And last night, the book club did a book for Disability Awareness Month. So that was good. I recommended that book by Judy Heumann. She's a disability activist, sorry. And we'll talk more about her probably later in the program. And what else have we done? We did a Kahoot game this past September. That was really fun. We had a lot of questions, and we had that hybrid in person and online. And we had 3 winners from that, first, second, and third place. The first place went to Jake and his family.
Was it a temple, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did a great job, and thanks to his son getting a lot of answers correct. And let's see, that was fun. Everybody liked it. They had fun, and they also, I believe they got education from it, information, awareness. And we're hoping you guys get that out of tonight's program as well. And let's see, what else have we done? This year, we have made a mission statement. I'm not going to read it to you guys, but if you haven't seen it, go on the Kol Tikva website. It's posted there in a couple of places. So we're proud of that. It actually only took us 2 or 3 meetings, which is pretty good, to finalize that. And it was approved by our president, Laura Rabney. She loved it. She thought it was wonderful. And we also have, let me see what else we did. We have an email address. No one has sent me email yet there, but if anybody wants to or has any questions or concerns, or even just to say hi, if you want to put it in the chat for me, Jessica, it's Kol Tikva. No, sorry, it's inclusion@koltikva.org.
Okay.
See, nobody emails me there, so I forgot for a second what it was called. Okay, so I think it's a nice email address. And let's see, what else do we have? Well, I talked about some of the events. Another upcoming event we're going to do in March is a different type of panel for diversity. We're going to have at least one person as a Jew of color. We're going to have at least one person with a disability. We're going to have at least one person from the LGBTQ community and or a woman. Usually some of us overlap in the categories. That's going to be March 19th, I believe it is, a Sunday morning at 11:15 at Temple. And for those that want to join it on Zoom, it'll be available as well. We're hoping that families come to that, religious school students and families, to educate everybody and anyone on all of those issues and topics. So there was a little issue that got fixed with the bathroom door stalls, the handicap bathroom stalls, because I saw one of our congregants, I'm not going to mention a name to protect her privacy, but I saw her struggling with her scooter to try to get out of the bathroom stall while I was waiting to go in. This was, I believe, on Sleehold. And I brought it up to the board, saying that the bathroom stall door needs to be changed. It goes the opposite way it was supposed to. It was pulling in, so someone in a wheelchair, even myself, would have a hard time getting out instead of pushing out when you want to leave the bathroom stall. And because of her scooter and the way it was working or not working to help her get out, we had somebody actually help her hold the door and she was able to get out. And it had been bothering me for years, but I never thought about mentioning it to somebody to fix it until I saw her struggling with it. So I not only spoke up for myself, but I spoke up for her and other people. Yeah, Jessica.
Which, by the way, please speak up, because that literally took about 5 minutes. All we had to do was switch the like that. Like those are things that, unless we're told, we just don't know. So yes, please feel always free to say something.
Yeah, if you see something, say something, as they say. Thank you. So that got fixed almost immediately after I told them to do it,
Okay.
asked them to do it. I wanted it fixed by Rosh Hashanah or Erev Rosh Hashanah so that we wouldn't have problems with it again, including myself. And it was taken care of. So that was good. And also for the men's bathroom, it was also changed, just so you guys know. Let's see what else. I mentioned already that. And we have one other program coming up in June that hopefully you guys can all come to, and we might even invite family and friends so we have more people there. It's going to be a drag queen bingo. I believe it's June 11th. It's a Sunday. So the guy wants to charge us a lot of money, so we need to raise money and also have enough to give him money. So we'll talk about it more at our next committee meeting, how much we want to charge. But we're thinking of having it lunch and bingo. And normally, those of you guys that play bingo in senior centers, I think they usually charge $20 for a card, right? Something like that. So I'm not sure how much we're going to charge to include the bingo and the lunch, but more information will be coming as it gets closer. So that's what we all have planned so far. You committee members, did I miss anything? No? Okay. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of myself, and then I'm going to let Jake and Laura introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started. So how it's going to work is we're going to introduce ourselves. Then we have like 3 pre-made questions that we came up with. And we're going to ask those first. And then we're going to open it up to audience questions. And we're going to share probably some of our Kahoot questions for those of you that weren't there at Kahoot. And for those of you that were, it's going to be a reminder, I guess.
We're old. We don't remember anyhow.
Okay. And then there might be a little reading at the end. We'll see how it goes. So I just want to say before we get started with the pre-made questions, at any time, if any of you have any questions you want to put in the chat, either direct message to me or to everyone, however you want to do it, or raise your hand. There's a little icon there to raise your hand, or you can just put your hand up in the air, whatever's easier for you. I'll eventually get to you. And Jessica, if you could help me out just in case I miss anybody. But if you can wait until we're finished with our pre-made questions, that would be helpful. I'm just letting you know, and I'll try to remind you to put any questions in there or ask it anytime you have something comes up. I know sometimes when we don't ask it, when we're thinking about it, we forget it later. So just feel free. Okay. Okay. So as I said, I'm Lisa Sage. I have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis since childhood. I've had it since I'm 3.5 years old. So I don't really remember not having a disability. It got worse as I got older. I started using a wheelchair and walker when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I was in public school most of my life, except in first grade, the principal tried to tell my parents that I couldn't be part of public school anymore because I was in a wheelchair. And that was probably, I don't know, in the late 60s, something like that.
Oh, hearing it.
So they got very upset about it and they fought it. And eventually, 6 months later, they let me back into the public school because at that time I was the only person in a wheelchair. And I guess they didn't know how to deal with it or handle it. So, but my parents told them, well, she's not developmentally disabled and she's probably even ahead of her class in reading. So why are you trying to tell her to go to a special ed class? She doesn't need to be in there. So anyways, that's what happened with me as a kid. And I know it's happened to some other people as well. And I worked as a health educator for 26 years for the county health department. I retired at the end of 2016, and I've been doing volunteer work since and keeping myself busy with anything and everything. I'm not bored, but I do miss teaching people health education topics. Hoping to do that with Temple one of these days. I did a nutrition class once. We didn't have too many people come to it, but it was nice. Weight control. And what else can I tell you about myself? I love music. I sing in the choir at Temple. And I think that's about all I want to share. If you guys have questions later of me, you can ask. Thank you all for being here. I see some new people joined as well. Nice to have you all here. So if you guys can put yourselves on mute, except for Jake and Laura, and Mary, yeah, except for Jake and Laura and I, and because I want to make sure we don't hear any background noise while we're talking. And then anytime you have a question, you can unmute yourself. Or I think Jessica might be able to help unmute you, right? Okay. So
I can't help unmute. I can
Oh,
mute
you can.
anybody.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure. Okay, so Jake, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself and your disability?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. My name is Jake Scherb. I have what's called retinitis pigmentosa, which is a retinal degenerative disease that starts with night vision and then goes basically then your peripheral vision goes and then the central vision can go, and the end game is often blindness. But basically I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and was probably in high school. I started to have issues with my night vision, and my dad thought I had a depth perception issue, didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I went to an optometrist who identified it, because it's typically there's a pigmentation around the outside of the retina. And she started to see that, and she said that I should go to a retinal specialist. And that's when I got diagnosed and started to realize what I had. I was thankful to know, what the cause was. And then over the years, it's been degrading. And after college, I came down here to California, and I've been working as an electrical engineer for about 25 years. And over those years, there's been a number of challenges where I had to give up driving and then learn how to use a cane and get around on my own. And I now have a beautiful family, my wife Shira and my 2 kids, Nathan and Simone. And my latest development is that I 6 months ago applied for a guide dog, and I'm now on a wait list. So hopefully within this year, hopefully I will get a guide dog to help me around. That's all I had for right now.
Thank you, Jake. I hope you get that guide dog. You really deserve it.
Yeah.
Great. Laura, how about you?
Okay. Well, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in my mid-20s. Not the mid-20s, I'm old, but not that old. But I was around 26, 27, I can't remember exactly. But I can trace some symptoms that I had back to college and even high school. At the time I was diagnosed, I was working as a freelance writer and a public policy analyst. And getting the MS didn't change my career really, but it did kind of reorient it. I started doing more with public policy related to disability issues. I did more advocacy, more of my writing. I did commentaries and that sort of thing for, like I wrote commentaries for the LA Times and the Daily News and so on. And a lot of them after I was diagnosed related to disability, healthcare issues as well. Generally speaking, healthcare issues, and particularly trying to make the healthcare system more disability sensitive, as I call it, because many of the things in the healthcare system don't work really well for people with disabilities. And in more recent years, since I retired, so to speak, is I have been spending my time doing digital art, and particularly fractal art, and I've been posting my pieces on a site called Deviant Art, but it's not really deviant. But anyway, and it's been great fun and very, very rewarding, and opening up whole new worlds for me and just satisfaction. But I do enjoy being able to share things with people and being able to still work on disability issues and inclusion. I believe strongly in inclusion, not just of people with disabilities, but of all people in all backgrounds. So I'm glad to be part of this committee.
Thank you, Laura. I just wanted to say one more thing about disabilities in general, because I didn't say it at the beginning, and also make one more announcement so you guys all know. So the people that are here on the panel tonight, we have physical disabilities, but there are also mental health disabilities, and more people are having those these days. Depression, anxiety, bipolar, all kinds of mental health issues. There's also some people say they're invisible disabilities, or things that we don't really recognize because we're not familiar with them. People that are autistic, they say on the spectrum, those types of disabilities. Learning disabilities is another one, ADHD and those kinds of things. So we have to remember when we talk about disability, it's not just physical, it's all everything and anything pretty much nowadays. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. So it is in the, how do you call it, category of disabilities, all of those types of things, invisible and not invisible. We have to remember that. And we are going to have on February 24th, JDAIM Shabbat, we're going to have someone from Respectability as the speaker. And she has autism, some other disabilities, and she's part of the LGBTQ community. So if you're able to attend that, it should be very, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, very interesting speech. I kind of looked at it online a little bit and it looks very good. So you're all welcome to attend that as well and learn a little bit about other types of disabilities. Okay, so does anyone have any questions from either of us before we move on to our first pre-made question or comments? No? Yes, maybe. Okay, so our first pre-made question is, what is something in your daily life that you wish people knew about you or your disability? Laura, how about you go first?
Okay. Well, most of my disabilities are the result of multiple sclerosis, as I mentioned. MS affects the central nervous system and can affect a lot of different things, can result in a lot of different kinds of symptoms. That's what the multiple is in multiple sclerosis. Early in the course of my MS, most of my symptoms were invisible. They were visual, or they were weird skin sensations, fatigue. Of course, my balance, that sort of became visible because I would wobble and people would think I was drunk. But other than that, many of them were invisible. As the MS progressed, it became more visible. And I started using a cane partly so that I wouldn't be considered drunk. But anyway, MS is so variable that I used to tell people that it stood for miscellaneous. And that in itself can kind of be a disability, because it's kind of hard to know what to do when your condition can change from day to day, from hour to hour, even from minute to minute, and sometimes pretty significantly, because MS also reacts to the heat. So if there was a lot of weather changes, that could make a difference in the symptoms as well. But anyway, currently I use a wheelchair when I go out into the community. But at home, I still walk with a cane or a walker. People need to understand that not everybody who uses a wheelchair is a full-time wheelchair user, and that doesn't mean that the person doesn't need the wheelchair when they use it. People should know that some wheelchair users who do use the chair all the time are not, though, in fact, confined to a wheelchair. I hate that term, absolutely hate it, because I know from using a wheelchair that it is not confining. In fact, it is freeing. It allows me to do things I couldn't do without the wheelchair. And the thing that is confining is the difficulty some people have in getting a wheelchair, because you usually have to get it through the healthcare system unless you have a significant amount of money, especially a power wheelchair can be very expensive. And the rules for covering wheelchairs in our healthcare system are not what I call disability sensitive. And I can get into that at some other time because it's a very long story. But suffice it to say that we do need to have a more disability sensitive healthcare system to make sure that those of us who need certain things to be more included in the world can be. So sorry if I went on too long, Lisa.
That's okay. I didn't time it this time, but thank you. But I just wanted to bring up a couple of points of what Laura mentioned. So one is that with my arthritis, I go through similar things that she does with her MS, in that when the weather changes, when it's humid out, or it's about to rain, usually my body can feel it's about to rain before the weathermen even know it's going to rain. Sometimes they say it's going to rain and I say, no, it's not. Or sometimes they don't even say it's going to rain and then it does. So my body's a pretty good predictor. That's not a good thing because that means I'm in more pain. But maybe it's a good thing because then I can plan ahead for rain or not. But anyways, that was one thing I wanted to say. And also she's talking about getting a wheelchair is not that easy, which is true. I had to use different kinds of wheelchairs all my life, and they were never made especially for me, and I'm a small adult, so almost a kid-sized person. And it was very frustrating that the wheelchairs never fit me right, that I always had to put cushions in the back and they weren't comfortable, they weren't right, until one day I went to this medical supply place and he said, how about we try to get you one custom made for you, for your body size, and that because you're kind of in between a kid's and an adult size. I said, that would be wonderful. Do you think my insurance would cover it? He said, well, we can try and we can fight it. So anyways, it's another little bit of a long story, but it finally worked and we had to appeal it, and they did pay for my 15 or 20,000. I don't even know how much it was, wheelchair. So I'm very happy to say that, like Laura said, if you do fight the system and speak up and find the right people to work with, you can get what you need. And you're right about disability sensitive, because I find that in the regular healthcare system, not as much as it used to be, it's getting better. But I think all doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals still need to be educated a little bit more on how to be sensitive to our needs, because a lot of them don't even want to see us just because we're in a wheelchair, which is very sad. But that's another story. So anyways, Jake, let me repeat the question for you because it's been a while. Okay. What is something in your daily life that you wish people knew about you or your disability?
So one thing I didn't mention is that for me, with the way my vision is today, it's kind of like if you were to look through paper towel rolls and very restricted vision, but then also my central unfortunately has my rods and cones. The way the disease works is while they are healthy, they don't know they are, so they think they're dying. So they constantly misfire. Eventually they do die, but they misfire. So I see lights, it looks like twinkle lights throughout all my central vision. So it's kind of blurry.
Mhm.
But as far as my everyday life, I do everything that most people do. Sometimes if they're visual, it takes a lot longer. For example, you come up with tricks. Like, for example, the simple thing of putting on toothpaste onto a toothbrush. I use a finger to do that because I can place it. I can't see necessarily. Can't be afraid to get dirty. No, I'm just kidding. But for the most part, I do things, best of my ability at home. There are some challenges, and in my office, I'm very thankful that I have a nice team that is familiar with my condition. So there are some tasks that may be visual where, because I'm an electrical engineer, sometimes I have to go to the lab and change boards or hook up cables. And I used to be able to do that, but now my colleagues are, I can ask them and they're happy to help, which is amazing. So I can, I spend most of my time on the computer, and I have screen magnification and readers and things like that. I feel very lucky to kind of be in this day of technology where there's so much assistive technology for people. And I'm also thankful for the state of California, the Department of Rehabilitation, because my experiences with them have been good. They've helped introduce me to services and tools that I've used for my own independence, as well as tools at work to help me be more productive. But
Thank you. Very good. Yeah, there are a lot of good things about our state of California. That's one of them. Thank you, Jake, for sharing your experience too. It helps us to understand about people like you with low vision, because most of us are not there yet, and hopefully we won't get there. But as we get older, of course, our eyesight gets worse. I was told when I was 40, oh, welcome to being 40. Now you need reading glasses. And then after 50, oh, welcome to being 50. Your eyes get worse. You start getting cataracts. I know it's not the same as low vision, but it has to do with the vision. So it's a little frustrating, but that's the way it goes. Anyways, we have all types of disabilities. And one I didn't mention was hearing impairment. And I know that also sometimes it's not always due to people getting older, but it does happen as part of aging as well. Just like our eyesight getting worse when we get older. The hearing usually gets worse when we get older too. And that's another type of disability. So moving on to the second question. Do you, as a person with a disability, feel included in synagogues and Jewish organizations? Please answer yes or no and explain why or why not. Jake, could you answer that first, please?
Sure. I would answer it yes, but my answers are in terms of Kol Tikva and my experiences there. I've always felt like the community is very inclusive, and I've been asked multiple times what could be done to help with to make things more inclusive. And sometimes it was suggested maybe Braille or large print.
Prayer books?
Yes, prayer books. Thank you. All of a sudden, and the problem is that the way my vision works, I wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't be that useful. I'd still be pretty slow at reading it. But this last Tuesday, the temple had a B'nai Mitzvah Revolution program for the teens, and it was about disability. And one of the activities was asking or had us list items that in the temple that were inclusive and things that were not inclusive. And it dawned on me that on one of the things, someone asked me, hey, when you're in this services, do you feel, is there anything that could be done? And I realized, when I go to the movie theaters, I ask for something called descriptive audio, where it describes what's happening on the screen as well, and you can hear the dialogue as well, but it really helps. You don't have to be able to see it to know what's happening. And I don't know that maybe in the future this might be a possibility, but one thought was perhaps could have a descriptive audio for services, because I don't necessarily know what's happening on the bima, what's going on. But otherwise, I must say it's a very inclusive community, and I've really enjoyed being part of it.
Thank you, Jake.
Sure.
Laura, I'll repeat it for you. Do you, as a Jewish person with a disability, feel included in synagogues and Jewish organizations? Yes or no, and explain why or why not.
I too am going to answer only in terms of Kol Tikva. Well, in terms of Kol Tikva and its predecessor, Temple Emet. My husband and I have been members since the Temple Emet days for a very, very long time. And the physical side of Temple Kol Tikva / Emet has been an issue more and more as my MS progressed. So my basic answer to the question was yes and no. It was kind of no when it was Temple Emet. It has become more yes since it's been Kol Tikva, and especially since Rabbi John came on the scene. The people in the temple, both versions of the temple, have been welcoming. That hasn't been the problem, but back at the beginning when we first joined the temple, there was not any interest at all in trying to make things more accessible. And that has changed a lot. And we have our beautiful, beautiful sanctuary with that gorgeous ramp going up to the bima now. And now I can go up to the bima and sit in my chair in front of the ark, reach out and touch the ark, pray before the ark, which I couldn't do before the modification was made. And it was not an easy thing to do. And when Rabbi John came in, he clearly had a commitment to try to make it inclusive, to try to change things around it. And he did it, and the temple board did it, and everybody in the temple contributed to this whole idea of inclusion. And I now feel very much included and very much welcomed and very much a part of Kol Tikva. And so in that sense, yes, that's the yes, the very emphatic yes of feeling part of the Jewish community at Kol Tikva.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Kol
Okay.
Tikva.
Any questions, comments so far from anyone? No? Okay, so the next one is, can you give an example of a situation when someone did something that bothered you and how it made you feel? So I'm going to take this one first. So it happens not that often anymore, but it did earlier in the 80s. But lately it's happened a few times to me. When I go to a restaurant with someone, my friend or my wife, whoever it might be, they sometimes they don't look at me, and they look at the person I'm with, and they ask him or her, where would she like to sit? And then Sarah or whoever I'm with will say, well, Lisa, where do you want to sit? Which table, this one or this one? Like I'm invisible or something. I'm not a person because I'm in a wheelchair. Like I can't talk and speak up for myself. So that really annoys me, irritates me, angers me. And sometimes I don't say anything to the person because I just think, oh my gosh, are they really that dumb or uneducated? But usually the person that's with me just kind of turns to me and says something. also there, years ago, it happened before the ADA, I believe. I went out with some friends during college and they tried to tell me, and one of my friends was also in a wheelchair. They tried to tell us that we couldn't sit in a certain part in the restaurant because we were going to be a fire hazard with our wheelchairs being in the way. And occasionally I still get that in small restaurants, but it doesn't make you feel nice. It's like just because the wheelchair is part of you doesn't mean you're a fire hazard. You're in the way. If, there's a fire and there's an emergency, people can't get around you, which is not always true. They just say that because, they don't want to block people's way or aisle. So that was one thing I wanted to share. And I know Laura had something to add to it, so I'm not going to take everything she wanted to say. So go ahead, Laura.
Well, I've had that experience as well in restaurants. And I also had that experience in an airport. And the one thing that I do remember from, which I was just recalling as I was listening to you speak, Lisa, was that in the airport when this happened, this was in the Portland, Oregon airport. When this happened, the first time I turned to the woman who had asked my husband, would I do something or another? I don't even remember what it was. And I turned to her and I said, yes, and I can speak for myself too. She turned so red. She got so embarrassed and I felt so satisfied being able to embarrass her because of her assumptions that I couldn't think, that I didn't have a brain because I was sitting in a chair. So I wanted to share that kind of gotcha with everybody too. Sometimes you get a little piece of something back.
Thank you. Jay?
So one thing that, this is more of an education thing as opposed to anything else, but one thing that can be bothersome is sometimes it's wonderful when people come up and say hi, hello and stuff, but because of my vision, I can't always, I typically don't recognize them unless I can pick up the voice right away. So it's really helpful when people say hello and introduce themselves, even though I know them, but just so that I know who I'm talking to. And the counterpart of that is after the conversation is when they leave, if they give me a cue that they're leaving, then that's also good, because I've had circumstances where I've continued to talk and no one's there. And it's one of those things that happens. And like I said, it's not that anybody did anything to be disrespectful. It's just not knowing. That's all. But that was one item.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Anybody? You can either unmute, right? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but first I just want to say thank you to the members of the panel and to Lisa. It's I just wish more people had an opportunity to learn about these types of experiences, and I just feel very grateful that we're able to share this space and hear from your experiences. So it means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. So I'm Latino, I'm a Jew of color, and I've been thinking a lot lately about how my identity intersects with my Jewish identity, my racial identity intersects with Judaism for me. And I'm kind of curious how folks with challenges like yourself see a similar question. Like, do you see your identity as somebody living with a disability intersecting with Judaism in any particular way, or Judaism intersecting in the reverse? Like what does that feel like for you all? And pardon me if that's not clear. I know it's kind of an abstract question, but.
Can you give kind of an example of what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can only really speak through my own experience. Like, I know part of the reason I care so much about racial justice issues is because I've been brought up in the spirit of tikkun olam, like, healing the world, and tzedakah, and like giving back, and things like that are part of Jewish values and cultures. So I'm just kind of curious if there's any aspect of your Jewish identity that has really been encouraging or challenging to negotiate in conjunction with disability.
Okay, thank you. If you guys don't mind, I'll take that one first. I'm just thinking as I go, so forgive me if the words don't come out exactly beautiful. But so I think that since I became a board member, I feel like I'm advocating more for the disability community and just the diverse community that we have at our temple in general. They did make the position for me, diversity and inclusion, because they wanted me on the board. And I think I said this at one of the Shabbat services, but for those of you that weren't there, I wanted a different position, but that position was taken already. And that person was not going to leave that position. So Rabbi John said, think of something, and I'm going to bring it to the board. I'm sure they're going to want you to be on it. And so I did, and between Sarah and I, we came up with diversity and inclusion, and they loved it. They said, oh, that's good. So I think, and of course I'm volunteering and doing all this work as a volunteer, but I'm enjoying it. And I really love my committee because we don't just meet and talk, we actually get things done. We talk about doing something and we actually do it. It may not get done at every meeting, but something gets accomplished, and we do what we say we're going to do. We don't just put it on paper, it actually gets done. And when I worked as a health educator, it was the same thing. It wasn't just talking, it was actually doing it, action. As they say, actions speak louder than words, which is true. So I think that I have become a little bit more religious in the last couple of years. I wouldn't call myself religious, but more so I feel more attached to my Judaism in the last few years than I have most of my life. Before, when I was growing up, it was more like a culture to me, not really a religion. And I did have my B'nai Mitzvah, so that made me feel a little more religious too. Not that I really learned to read Hebrew that well, but and Sarah still challenges me sometimes. What letter is this? Don't ask me that. But I don't know if that answered your question, David, but so I'm kind of feel like I'm doing both Judaism and for disability rights, and not just disability rights, but diversity and inclusion in general. Sometimes I speak up and they do something about it on the board, and sometimes I speak up and I feel like they ignore what I'm saying or don't really care. So that part of it frustrates me and gets me upset sometimes. And I don't know if I should yell at somebody or do something or what, but some things are out of my control that they're not going to change. Like, I don't know if they're ever going to change the back parking lot to make it easier for us, especially at events that we're not able to go to because they blocked the back parking lot off. But that's another story, so I don't want to go into that now. So that's for me. Who wants to go next, Jake or Laura?
I mean, I
Jake, go ahead. I'm
I
still
was just
thinking.
going to say, I'm like trying to figure out, I feel like the committee is a good example of like how the intersection of Judaism and the advocating for the diversity and the inclusion and people with disabilities. And I feel like it's doing some good things for the Jewish community, and I'm excited as to what's coming up next. Similarly, I also had that nice opportunity to do the B'nai Mitzvah last year. It was something I didn't have the opportunity to do when I was a kid. And I really felt like that was also brought me a little bit closer, and it's been nice to get to know people within the community, and they're very accepting of all, disability or no disability, whatever challenges we all face.
That's true. Thank you, Jake.
Sure.
Laura?
I'm still trying to figure out what my answer really is. I've always had very strong feelings about the idea of tikkun olam, even before I ever heard the term. But when I was growing up, most of the time I was growing up, my growing up years were pretty much secular. It wasn't until we brought our son to Hebrew school that we really got involved in Judaism again. My husband was also brought up mostly secular. And we started getting more involved, going to a Torah study and so on. And I remember asking what the Torah teaches about disability. What are those ideas? What is the attitude of Judaism toward disability? And this was before Rabbi John came to us. And I don't even remember which rabbi or rabbis I asked, but there was kind of like a hesitation of like, I'm not sure. It was like not really clear. And so I'm not sure that I really directly connected my Judaism with my feelings about disabilities, except to the extent that that involved tikkun olam. I know that Judaism has the idea of don't put a boulder in the path of a blind person, or that sort of thing. But that wasn't the kind of thing I meant. I meant something beyond that. And I still don't have an answer to that. But as I said, tikkun olam, I think, in many ways encompasses not only people with disabilities, but all kinds of civil rights inclusion. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I think that includes people with disabilities. So I don't know if that answered your question, David, but that's the best I can do right now.
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions, David? You said you had several.
I mean, yeah, but if other folks have questions, I'll cede the floor.
Anyone else?
Gee, we must have
Okay.
done a wonderful job. Nobody has any questions.
You want to ask another one, David?
Yeah, I mean, another thing, and this is based purely on just not having the experience myself. I'm just very curious to hear a little bit more about what your family's what your family life or what your family support structure has been like as you've gone through life with your disabilities. It sounds like people on this call have kind of had an evolving degree of challenges or changing challenges over time. And I'm kind of curious, like, how has your family evolved to support your needs as you've gone through that?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to go first. Oh, somebody's in the background. So I was fortunate to have great parents growing up. It was very difficult for them, especially my mom, because she was the main caretaker, to deal with me always going to doctors and hospitals and surgery after surgery. I've had 13 surgeries in my life. The first 2 were when I was 8 and 9 years old, very young. That was very scary for her. She was not just my mom, she was my best friend. She was my security blanket. She was there whenever I needed her. And she did everything for me. She helped me get dressed. She helped me in the shower till I was a teenager. Then I did what I could do myself, and she helped me with what I couldn't do. So she did everything for me. My dad was very different because he was always working. At one point in his life, he had 2 or 3 jobs. My mom didn't go to work until I was 8 or 9 years old because she was mainly taking care of me and going back and forth to doctors and everything else. And then she decided she wanted to be a substitute teacher, so she did that once in a while. But my dad was a different support to me. And as I got older, he was actually more supportive because he was the one that said, Lisa, go away to college. You can do it. My mom wanted me to go to the community college that's 20 minutes, half hour away from home, and stay home for another 2 years. And my dad encouraged me to apply to any college I wanted. It didn't have to be, in California. It could be out of state. And they would support me. And he kind of helped me with financial stuff, like getting my first credit card, my first checking account, all of that stuff. And they helped me move into the dorm when I moved away to UC Riverside. And the one thing that I wish my mom would have done for me when I was a teenager is, even though I was living at home, is get a caregiver, a personal care assistant, to help me with, showering and getting dressed and things like that. So when I went away to college, it wouldn't have been such a shock for me to be on my own and have to deal with people telling them, how to help me get dressed and how to help me in the shower and all of that. And I don't know if it's just because resources weren't brought to her attention to do that for me, or she just wanted to do it herself. I don't know. I never really asked her, but that's just one thing looking back on growing up. And it was hard because I was very attached to her and I had to make new friends and I had to be more independent than I was. And I was very shy. But living in the dorms helped me a lot and I went for therapy because I really needed some emotional support the first couple of years of college because I felt isolated and alone. And luckily, I lived in a hall where there were a lot of guys, and mostly guys, actually, not too many girls. I got to be friends with guys that I never was before in my life. Once in a while, I had a guy friend that I liked, but nothing really close friendship. So that was nice. And people accepted me for who I was, even though I was shy. And a couple of guy friends said, Lisa, you need to talk. We want to hear what you have to say. Why are you so quiet and always listening to us? And, don't be afraid to speak up. We want to hear what you have to say. You're intelligent, and I'm sure you have a lot going on in that brain of yours. Tell us what you're thinking. So that helped me a little bit. Every day I got a little bit less shy, and with therapy, it helped and all that. So, yeah, and they were very supportive of me. My mom eventually said, okay, when I went away to college, okay, yeah, that was a good decision. And then I started driving my own van when I was in my second year of college. So, and that was a big thing for me for being independent too, because I didn't know that I could drive until then. I thought, oh, I'm going to have someone drive me around the rest of my life. And that was with Department of Rehab helping me get a specially equipped van as well. Like Jake mentioned before, they helped him. They also helped me. So that was very good. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I don't remember what the question.
I-
Um,
Did you want to say something, Laura? I'm sorry. Did you want to go?
I can restate it. I'm just kind of curious about how your families have supported
families.
you as you've kind of gone through life, various stages of life.
um,
So,
Jake, did you want to go or should I?
sure. Or unless you want to go first, it doesn't matter.
I've had very, very good support from my family, from my parents, my brother, my husband, but ever since we got married and when I was diagnosed after we were married, but he has been absolutely incredible as a support. I don't think I would be able to do half of what I do or have done without his support. And so, yes, I'm very, very lucky. I'm very fortunate. I was an MS peer counselor for 10 years, and I heard stories from people in the groups that I co-led, as well as from those that I counseled one-on-one about family situations that were very different from that. Very sad situations. One woman in particular, I always think of this. She said, when she was diagnosed, her parents told her, "You can't have MS. Our people don't get that. That's not something that our people get. Like it was a disease or a mark of some sort of horrible punishment from God." And so I'm very, very blessed to have a very supportive family. So, yes.
Let's see. For me, growing up, my parents were very supportive, but I wasn't diagnosed till later, and my vision really didn't start to get really bad. I had lost my night vision when they were still around, but I didn't give up driving until after they had passed. And it was actually when I gave up driving, maybe a year later or so, I met my wife, Shira. And I still remember that night and that where we met, and I had a friend from high school that was there. And as it started to get dark, and it was a picnic, and there was going to be a walk in the dark, essentially. And as it got to be nighttime, I was reliant more on my friends because I couldn't see. And so Shira got the idea that we were together or something, until my friend cleared it up and said, no, I'm his friend. I'm just helping him out. And then she helped me out. And anyway, the bottom line is she's been a huge support to me. And as my vision has gotten worse over the years, you know, she's our sole driver, and takes good care of me. And, you know, around the house, the kids are also help in their way. Also, you know, like when we go for walks or something, they'll hold my hand, or they'll tell me if there's obstacles, or they'll help get things for me that may take me a little bit longer to get. But they're all very supportive. And, you know, occasionally there's something left on the floor, or a cabinet left open, and I'm 9 times out of 10 I find it. But you know, and they feel terrible. But the truth is, they do so good almost all the time that, you know, it's I just feel very lucky, the support I get.
Yeah, I just want to say, Jake, that I don't know your kids that well. I got to know them a little bit, and Shira too. I got to know them a little bit at Shannon's party because they sat with me and they took turns sitting with me. And Simone is like so mature, you guys. I think she's 10 years old and she's like going on 40 or something. She told me so much stuff. You guys weren't even at the table. I think you had stepped away. And she told me, I just asked one question and she went on and on about all this stuff. But she's wonderful. Nathan's a good kid too. I don't know him that well, but I'm sure you guys are proud of him for his bar mitzvah. But I just wanted to say, when I see you guys together at Temple, your kids are always there with you, Jake. One of them is always there making sure you're okay, especially at a night event, walking around and you don't bump into someone or something. And, you know, and a couple times I remember going up to you and saying, hi, Jake, it's me, Lisa. Like, oh yeah, you'll say, hi, Lisa. And Shira always is there with you, making sure you're okay if you go up on the beam and all that. So you are very fortunate to have a wonderful family. And my spouse, Sarah, she's always there for me too, and very supportive and helpful. So I want to appreciate her. And we wouldn't have met if I wasn't disabled. So you never know. Things happen for a reason. Some good things and some bad things, but that's part of life. Everybody has their challenges in life. Everybody has their day-to-day challenges, whether they're mental or physical or some of each. And David, I just wanted to thank you for asking that question. And I also asked Jake that question when we were first on the committee together, when I was talking to him on the phone about something. How did you and Shira meet? And he told me that story, and I thought that was so sweet. Because you never know how people meet and get together. And it worked out. Very nice. So thank you for that. And thank you, everybody. And Maxine, Peter, you guys have been quiet. Any questions from you guys?
No, I don't have any questions. It's just that I find it so interesting to hear about your challenges and how you deal with them. And I love hearing the stories about the support and family. And
we're learning.
yes,
We're old, but we're still learning this a lot of these things are new for us.
yeah. And I think, Jake, I think one of the first times you spoke on one of these get-togethers, and you talked about, and I guess I knew about saying the name of someone I was approaching who was visually challenged, but putting the hand on the shoulder and letting you know that someone is there before the voice comes, or at the same time as the voice, it makes a little bit more sense. And I've actually had a chance to do that with someone other than you. And but I thank you for reminding me of that, the need of that.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I know.
I think that's part of what I find so valuable about conversations like this, because there are a lot of things that I wish I knew how to do better, or I knew the appropriate way or a helpful way or a respectful way to support folks in my life that I'm connected to, that I want to show kindness and support to. And I don't always know the best way to do that. And I think it's one of the challenges that our society faces is not often having the opportunity to have conversations like this, and then individually to be like, often I'm nervous to ask some questions, or I'm hesitant to do something because I feel like it's going to be awkward or I'll make a mistake. So it's like, I just love that Maxine and Peter are also like acknowledging that, you know, even older years, you're still learning so much. Like, it's just so valuable to contribute and participate in things like this so that we can work as a community to support everyone.
Absolutely.
You know, last year I had the opportunity to speak to some of the religious school kids, and it's funny because as we get older, we don't know how to ask questions, or, you know, ask the uncomfortable questions, but kids don't have that filter yet.
Mhm.
They ask all sorts of things that, you know, some things that you may want to ask as well, and other things that, you know, are just, it's interesting what they're thinking about. But I agree, there should be some sort of safe environment, knowing that people aren't going to take offense. You know, it's good to educate and to acknowledge. And there are sometimes things that I don't realize could help me in certain circumstances, and some of them have been learned over the years, but other ones, you know, and someone will say, would this help? And I'm like, oh yeah, actually that would. And I may not have realized it, but there are a lot of different circumstances, and people react very differently that want to help or ask a question. But I'm always happy to answer questions, so you can
Yeah,
approach
me
me.
too. That's a good point, Jake. I agree. And I also spoke to the religious school students last year as well, a couple of different groups. And I think they were 4th to 6th graders. And you're right, they're not really afraid to ask questions. And after I spoke to them for like 5 minutes, all their hands went up, not all of them, but a lot of them, and I would answer. And some of the questions, I can't remember what they all were now, but a couple of them really made me think, how am I going to answer that? So it is interesting. When I was growing up in a wheelchair, when I first started using a wheelchair, I was using a scooter. And some kids, little kids, probably 5 and under, would come up to me, hey, where did you get that? Because they thought it was something that their mom could buy for them. And, you know, that is a cool car. Where did you get that? You know, not, you know, why are you in a wheelchair? They didn't see it as a wheelchair, you know. And then some little kids would ask me, are you little? Like they're not sure if I'm an adult or a kid. Are you little? Yes, I'm little. Why are your hands so small? It's just the way I am. You know, depending on the age, I would answer according to the age. If they were older, I would explain it's arthritis. Most kids don't understand what arthritis is. It's just the way I am. Were you born like that? No. So, you know, and sometimes the parent would say, stop asking the lady questions. I said, no, I would rather them ask questions than stare at me, because usually the kids stare. They're wondering why I'm in the wheelchair. I can tell they're looking at my legs, they're looking at my feet, they're looking at my face. I can tell they're probably thinking, why is she in the wheelchair? But they don't want to ask. So, you know, I would rather them ask questions like Jake said than, you know, just stare. And I was with my niece when she was a kid. I was taking her somewhere, and kids would stare at me or make fun of me. And she would tell them, take a picture, it lasts longer. Like, stop staring at my aunt, leave her alone. So.
That's
Laura, did you want to add
family
anything?
support.
Yeah.
Multi-generational family support.
Mhm. Hi, Neil. I see you in the background.
I'm here.
Laura, did you want to add anything?
No, I
No?
just, I
Okay.
enjoyed the story. I agree about asking questions. I think it's a big mistake for a society to have taught kids that they shouldn't ask questions. I'd much rather have kids ask questions, have anybody ask questions.
Mhm. Yeah, and as they say, it's never a dumb question, just ask it.
Right. Right.
That's right. My first question that I got was, how do you get out of bed? From the kids. I still remember. I was like,
Hmm,
it's like, just like
That's a-
everyone else.
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good question. Oh.
I wish we had more
Anyone else?
questions tonight.
Anyone else?
I don't have a
Yes.
question, Lisa, but I just
Yeah.
want to say that I've really enjoyed the conversation. And of course, I'm sorry about my daughter. Very, very proud of my husband for sharing about himself. And I appreciate you and Laura sharing too. And it's really nice that the committee took the time to organize this. And I wish more people would have come because I think they would have really
Yeah, me
benefited
too.
from all that's been shared. And I hope next time we'll get more people to participate. It's been really nice. Thank you all for being so vulnerable and talking about your experience.
Thank you too. And I just
Okay.
wanted to, I know it's getting late. I just wanted to share a couple of fun questions from the Kahoot game. I think most of you were there, but do you have those handy, Jessica?
I do. I can't believe I like am fading as we go. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
now I have to
yeah.
pay attention. It's 11:15 here.
Yeah, it's late
All right,
there, sorry.
let me share my screen. I am ready for you guys.
We're not gonna do all of them. Let's do the 2 ADA ones.
Oh,
And
I
you guys
haven't
can
looked
just-
at them, so you're
Oh,
gonna have
yeah,
to
that
tell me
one's
which
fi-
one
yeah,
you
that
want.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's fine. Okay, so I'll read the question and you guys can just yell out the answer. What does the ADA stand for? A, Americans with Dogs Association. B, American Democracy Act. C, Artists Demonstrating Art. D, Americans with Disabilities Act. Just yell out the
Hey,
D as in dog, right?
Right.
Very good. The next one. What year did the Americans with
Good.
Disabilities Act get signed into law?
Mm.
A, 1970, B, 1980, C, 1990, D, 2000.
The
B maybe? A or B?
C.
C is the correct answer,
Oh, C,
1990.
really?
Mhm,
Wow.
yeah,
What's that? That's interesting.
okay.
Wait,
Nathan
really?
did call out the right answer on that, by the way.
Ah, yay.
Nathan.
Nathan was our big winner that day, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
She's
When
very
did
competitive.
Tikva install its wheelchair accessible ramp to the beam? A, 2020, B, 2017, C, 2019,
Oh,
D,
yeah, for sure.
2018.
17 or 18.
I think it's D.
You're
It's either B
correct.
or D. D?
Yeah, it's
D,
D as in
okay.
dog, 2018.
Okay.
Okay, one more. A
Sure.
white cane with a red
Ooh.
bottom indicates that the user is completely blind. True or false?
Oh, I don't remember this.
I know there's different colors.
Nathan says false.
All
Nathan
right.
is correct.
I think it has to be striped, right, Jake? Has to be
That's-
striped?
It's their striped, that's right. It was striped, could be deaf and blind even.
Oh,
Oh,
so what is the,
Jake, why don't you tell us, Jake?
I know that there's three. There's the one with the red at the bottom, meaning it typically means some sight. And I think that the completely white is blind, and the red and white stripe is blind and deaf.
Mm.
Or yeah,
So a red tip is blind or legally blind?
yeah.
partial?
some site
Partially.
or law, some site law, partially.
Okay,
So
got it.
Okay, you want the last one?
Yeah, let's
you
do
go.
that.
it's red at the bottom.
Oh, there, he's showing the cane.
All right, so yours is partial.
Yes.
Okay.
This woman is recognized internationally as a disability activist. Hey, Lisa Say. B, Judith Human. C, Betty White. D, Judith Herman.
B.
I've seen her TED Talk. It's B.
Oh, cool.
B. Oh, you saw her? Do what talk?
The TED Talk. It's on YouTube. I didn't like
Oh,
see
TED
her, see
Talk.
her. I just saw the
Oh,
YouTube
that's
video,
good.
but it was very good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So she is a disability rights activist. This is her book, if you guys want to read it, Being
Yeah,
Human.
I read it. I just couldn't go to book club, but I
Oh,
read the
good.
book.
Okay, yeah, I read it too. It was a very good book. I was gonna read some passages, but since it's getting late, I'm just gonna take one from here and read it to you guys. So let me pick which one I want to share with you. Let's see. Okay, so I'll just read this section here. So we need to accept our humanity and design our world around it. Use universal design, support personal assistance, change how we hire. We can design our cities and our society in a way that fosters belonging and community rather than segregation and isolation. We can move from thinking it can't happen to saying it can happen, from being naysayers to being problem solvers. How we treat disabled people, how we treat minorities boils down to our fundamental beliefs about humanity. Do we believe that we all have something to contribute, regardless of where we're from, how we move or think, the language we speak, the color of our skin, the religion we choose, and the people we love? Do we believe in equality? We need to look inside and think deeply about whether we really believe this to be true. That is only one passage, but also
Beautiful.
just
Thank you.
so you all know, she was in a documentary called Crip Camp, which is on Netflix. And it's a very good documentary. It was actually nominated for an Oscar. Unfortunately, didn't win, but so you can watch that on Netflix. I think it's still available. And I just wanted to end with thanking everybody for coming. Please email our inclusion@kultikva.org. And thank you, Jessica, for recording this. So hopefully it can be put up on the website with our Shabbat services. People that couldn't come can watch it. And thank you, Jake and Laura, for participating. I know David already signed off. Maxine, Peter, Shara, Sarah, everybody that came. Hi, Simone. And yeah, thank you everybody for participating.
Okay.
And have a good
See you,
evening.
Lisa.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very
Go
much.
get some sleep,
Bye.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Burn the
Good night,
midnight oil.
everyone.
Night all.